our next panel will be Jill Collier, an RN who will be joining us remotely, and Biggtree and Cntac. And then panel number 3 will be Gabe, Blomgren, Bernadette, Pahar, Dr. Teresa Dיישר.
Good afternoon. Who'd like to begin?
There's a video. Looks like she's ready.
Yes, she is. Hello, can you see us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine. Please go ahead.
All right. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to address you here today. My name is Jill Collier, and I'm a registered nurse here in Washington State. So first, I want to address a key issue with this bill, that this is being inappropriately oversimplified into being a pro or an anti-vaccine debate with absolutely no in-between for dialogue in regards to safety. So I personally do not consider myself anti-vax. I administer vaccines to well-informed, consenting adults. But the heart of this issue is vaccine safety and ignored advancements in medical research. So what you just heard was that the science is settled. Well, whenever we universally accept that something is settled, we stop searching, and therefore we stop advancing. That's not how medicine works. Anyone who has been in the medical field greater than 5 years can likely tell you specific examples of how their practice has changed due to new discoveries that has come forward. So when we say the science is settled, I fear that we will unintentionally halt the advancements of safety in this field. We now have the emerging field of epigenetics and the ability to research and analyze how our processes affect people at the cellular and genetic level. And these are capabilities that we did not have 50 or 60 years ago when these vaccines were first being formulated. So as medical professionals, we can only do the best with what we have and our safety standards. We know that genetically, not every child is built to handle vaccines or the current schedule. The previous panel just admitted to that. We tragically find this, and it's supported by the over $4 billion in taxpayer-funded compensation for vaccine injury. Now, I know that the argument that you're going to hear here is, well, these are the kids that are simply covered by medical exemptions. But let me make it abundantly clear. There is nothing simple about obtaining a medical exemption. And unfortunately, we learn about some of these kids' genetic susceptibilities in their autopsy reports. Medical providers today are more hesitant than ever to sign these medical exemptions because of the increasing hostility surrounding this debate, because we cannot have logical conversation or discussion. We all want the best and the safest, healthy in society that we can, but we cannot trade the health and safety of one population simply because they are a minority that has not been well studied. As medical providers, we have a responsibility to all patients. So when we begin mandating and legislating medical procedures, patient care suffers because we are no longer allowing the doctor-patient relationship to guide best and safe practice. The previous panel is correct. Absolutely no one can guarantee 100% that a vaccine is going to be without risk. So because they carry the risk of death or injury, we cannot blanket mandate an injection for a child and hold their education hostage for noncompliance. That is not safe patient care, and that is not freedom of medical consent. Please oppose this bill.
Thank you, Ms. Collier, for your perspective and for appearing before us today. Are you able to stay with us just briefly while we listen to the other panelists in case there are questions?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. And good afternoon. Go right ahead.
Madam Chair, Committee, thank you for having me. My name's Biggtree. I was a producer on the daytime talk show The Doctors for 6 years. I won an Emmy Award celebrating the best that science and medicine has to offer. And then I investigated the story of Dr. William Thompson, the whistleblower at the CDC that came forward and provided 10,000 documents proving that they had committed scientific fraud in the MMR autism study and that the CDC knows it causes autism and they hid it from the public. In addition, the lead specialist for the government in vaccine court against autism, Dr. Andrew Zimmer, just placed a affidavit to the Department of Justice 1 month ago saying that his testimony has been used to say that there is no mechanism by which a vaccine causes autism. He says that is a lie. That is not what he said to the Department of Justice when he had changed his mind. He's one of the great scientists of our time on this topic. He said, I've changed my mind. The mechanism is a previous mitochondrial disorder by which the vaccine can cause autism. The Department of Justice kicked him out, stopped using him, but stuck with his old statement. He is now going up against the Department of Justice saying that they have lied. So that's 2 instances where the MMR vaccine has been proven dangerous by lead officials and nobody seems to care. In addition, the MMR vaccine is in court right now because Stephen Kraling and his partner, 2 doctors that worked at Merck, have come forward saying that they were forced to commit scientific fraud on the mumps strain, that it did not have efficacy, and they were asked to doctor that study. That Merck tried to have that thrown out of court. It's still in court today. The judge has stood with it. We have problems with this vaccine program. We're being told told they're safe. It's a bumper sticker slogan. We hear it over and over, but science is not backing it up. My nonprofit, the Informed Consent Action Network, has been in a debate with Health and Human Services. I've provided an 88-page document about our debate with them, the questions we've asked, and why we think their answers are coming up short. Very basically, not a single childhood vaccine in our program, the 16 vaccines, has ever been through a double-blind, inert placebo study. It's never been done. That is the gold standard of science for all drugs. Vaccines are not going through it. Now, because of our work, they are admitting it and saying we don't do it because it would be unethical. So we have an untested product made by an industry that constantly is paying billions of dollars in lawsuits for lying to us about safety, and now they have one product that they don't have to test for safety. So I challenge the statement that it has been through safety tests. In addition, we take liability away from the industry on a product that hasn't been tested for safety in the 1986 Vaccine Injury Compensation Act. And now we're going to take away choice. We've removed all of the market forces to make a better product, to continue evolving the vaccine program. They are getting a free ride, and now government officials are going to take away our right, take vaccines out of this. We are talking about injecting free citizens with a product they have no control over. We may be concerned Donald Trump is going to build a wall we don't have control. How about a president that can inject us with products we have no choice over? We've got to think about the future, and we've got to look at our history on this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bigtree. Mr. Canthack, hello.
Hi. My name is Carl Canthack. I'm the school board president of Mount Pleasant. It's a small district that straddles both Skamania and Clark County. And I actually have a tinderbox school, and that is because I have 8 kindergartners, and if one kid skips one chickenpox, that gives me a 12.5% exemption rate. And when you drill down on the numbers, that is frequently what is occurring. 47 states offer non-medical exemptions, and the difference in terminology between personal and religious is that during the 60s, they were the court cases were looking at conscientious objectors and saying that a person does not have to belong to a specific religion in order to claim that, and that a personal philosophy can be equal to that. So the difference is in terminology, but in states that don't call it a personal, then the personal is considered to be within that. One of the things I'm doing is as an elected official and a data freak, I'm here to clear up some confusion. You've been hearing outrageous claims about the exemption rates in Clark County and that are wrong. And specifically is that Clark County does not have 22% of students missing MMR. The Clark County exemption rate is only 5.3%. You can look that up yourself on the DOH reports online. That's what I did. And the 22% claim comes from a voluntary database, which is just various pediatric groups that upload vaccinations that they administer. Statewide, the exemption rates have dropped over the last 2 years. You can find that report also. It goes 20 years from 1998 to this current year. And when you look at this, less than 3% of students use an exemption of any type to be incomplete for MMR, DTaP, polio, or Hep B, 3.7% for chickenpox. 97% of Washington students are complete or on schedule to becoming complete. Of that 3%, 2% or less is the personal exemption. So if you could wave a magic wand and get all these people to vaccinate, that's the most that you could increase it is 2%. And this bill is not a magic wand. It will not get most of these families to resume vaccinating. That's not going to happen. There is such tremendous pressure to vaccinate. By the time a family chooses not to vaccinate, they're very committed to that decision. Let me be clear, most personal exemptions are for a few shots, not all of the shots. So even if a parent turns down the 5th or 6th DTaP or chickenpox or only Hep B, the DOH still brands them, and under this bill, they will be kicked out. If this bill passes, someone with an active hepatitis B will be allowed in school, but someone who refuses will be banned from school. If their parents are not going to get more shots. We know this from SB277. I have a SB277 refugee in my school that says if this bill passes, they will leave. They left California, and they will leave this state too.
Mr. Canthack, thank you very much. Are there any questions of this panel? Senator O'Ban.
So you've just listed several statistics about the lower vaccination rates than what we were hearing. Is that in a written statement that you've provided, or?
Yeah, you'll have a laminate. Okay. That's this laminate right here, and then there's the one that shows this. And then also, on the back of this one, it shows what, you know, there was a lot of play last summer where Camas County, Idaho went globally viral as the worst anti-vaccine hotspot in the country, and because a quarter of their kindergartners were not receiving all vaccinations. And when you Google Camas County, they only have 7 kindergartners in the whole county. It's an 1,100 person county. They don't even have 1 person per square mile in that county. And somehow this got by peer review and went national.
Are there any additional questions of this panel?
Is it possible to just address one issue, which is herd immunity, which this is all about? And I'd like to speak about our side on that. Would anyone ask the question about that so I could answer to it?
Certainly. What about herd immunity?
Okay, so we're told that herd immunity is the reason we want to force vaccinate everybody. We know that the MMR vaccine needs a 95% vaccine uptake. The problem with the discussion about this is it's not at 95% of our children, it's 95% of our entire society. There's 2 adult mandated vaccines by the CDC because the vaccine only lasts 10 years. If I asked everyone in this room and probably everyone on this panel, have you had your MMR booster in the last 10 years, you would say no. That means that we've never been near 95%. We're about 60%. So this entire herd immunity discussion does not count on your teachers, your taxi drivers, your bus drivers, your restaurants. Every adult in America, for the most part, has not had their boosters. So we're at 60%, not 95%. Herd immunity is a myth. It's an advertising slogan from the pharmaceutical industry to get us to force vaccinate the tiny 2 or 3% of unvaccinated children. That will not get us there. So there have been no outbreaks that have destroyed this country, even though we have never reached the herd immunity threshold. That is a fact, and I would like any of the people who were up here before to address that issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Biggtree, and thank you to this panel for being here today. Appreciate it. And Senator Randall, if you'll call the next panel up.
We'll now have Gabe Blomgren, Bernadette Pajor, and Dr. Teresa Deicher. And apologies if I have mispronounced your names.
Good afternoon. Who'd like to begin? Welcome.
I will. I am Dr. Teresa Deicher, and as a mother of a child who was severely immunocompromised, I know how important it is to protect the health of immunocompromised people in our population. But as a scientist, I am very concerned that by eliminating the personal exemption, because religious and medical exemptions are so difficult to get, that we will be putting another population at grave risk. And those are those children who are genetically susceptible to vaccine-induced injury. And we are told constantly that vaccine safety has been well established. And I can tell you, as a scientist, the clinical trials done with vaccines have never met the standards that must be met for other drugs. Del Bigtree mentioned some of the reasons. Placebo, double-blinded controls are never done. And most importantly, we have components in our vaccines that are of grave concern. And I want to just go over one of the components in addition to the virus that is so particularly concerning, particularly to genetically susceptible children. So several vaccines, the MMR, the chickenpox, hepatitis A, some polio-containing vaccines, are manufactured using human fetal cells. And in the final product, there are contaminants from that human fetal cell, DNA fragments as well as cellular debris. And they're at quite high levels. So Merck has published for chickenpox that there are 2 micrograms of the contaminating fetal DNA within the vaccine. So every time we inject our children with chickenpox, we inject them with 2 micrograms of contaminating fetal DNA. Now, many scientists will brush this off. They'll tell you that that DNA does not have any biological activity, but the fields of gene therapy and immunology have established beyond a doubt that that has great biologic activity. As a matter of fact, levels of fetal DNA that are the same levels that we give to our children when we vaccinate activate a severe immune response that is what is responsible for triggering labor and delivery. So we are giving our children residuals in these vaccines, particularly dangerous to children who have MTHFR mutations, who would be very susceptible from having an immune response to the contaminants become a self or an autoimmune response. And I would ask you to maintain the personal exemptions so that these other children can be protected as well.
Thank you, Doctor, very much. And who would like to go next?
Hello, Chair, and thank you, panel, for listening to my comments. I'm a pastor in Spokane, Washington, and just wanted to address that me and these beautiful people behind you, we see behind the window dressing of the philosophical argument.
Pastor, could you introduce yourself, your name, please?
Yeah, Gabe Blomgren.
Thank you.
Thank you. My heart is to represent all faiths. I'm a Christian pastor. I'm also a teacher in a Christian school, and I know with confidence that many of these people behind me and the people who come here today are educated. And I want to read a few things. There is only one good knowledge and only one evil, ignorance. Knowledge is on our side. Let me ask you, does a parent fail to give a vaccination because of ignorance? The designers of 5841 think you are ignorant. The truth is, these tyrants march over the ignorant. We know better to stand up for those who don't know better. We know to stand up against a medical community that thinks it knows better. My wife is a nurse, by the way, and I don't take hacks at the medical community just viciously. We stand against legislators who seem to know it all. What do we know about this? We know that this is about money. I, as a pastor, know that my congregation has the ability to pick and choose their congregational leader. I also know that as a free market capitalist, we have the right to choose our products, our services. Have you ever heard of a company by the name of Edsel or Triumph? These are failed companies. Merrick, Smith, Glaxo, these companies should be failing. But because of the system we're in, we are forced vaccinated with products that are not standard. And the only freedom we have is a philosophical one and religious one. And I, as a pastor, see beyond the window dressing of this philosophical argument and know that the next gate to come down is the religious argument. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Bernadette Pager. Hi. I am here today as mom to a vaccine-injured child, representing the thousands outside who are not being given a chance to talk to you today. To be legal and ethical, any law that would restrict personal medical freedom must serve a compelling and critical state need that cannot be met by any other method. The push to eliminate exemptions is being justified by the notion of community immunity. The public is being told they must vaccinate their children in order to protect others, and legislators are being told you must use the power of the state to increase that push. But there is no compelling reason to remove from citizens the right to say no to any of the vaccines now on the school list. Either the infections are not spread in school or the vaccines targeting them are not capable of preventing the spread of infection. Hepatitis B is not an infection spread in a school setting. Children who actually have hepatitis B are allowed to go to school. The polio vaccine stops symptoms but does not prevent transmission of the polio virus. Mumps is breaking out in fully vaccinated high school and college kids, and the pertussis vaccine is utterly failing. Children who have had 5 or 6 doses are still getting whooping cough, and even when it does reduce their symptoms, it doesn't stop colonization or spread infection. Fully vaccinated children are infecting their newborn siblings. It's absurd to even consider refusing school entry to a child for a missing dose of this failed product. And then we have measles. We have measles in the news, fear being spread everywhere for a viral infection that in a developed nation, this is not the Philippines, in healthy children is benign and temporary and leaves children with lifetime immunity, something the vaccine does not provide. Parents in Clark County have posted videos of their children with measles, a faint rash, happily playing video games. That family and all the families who opted not to get Merck's controversial liability-free MMR product have been excellent, responsible citizens keeping their children at home, isolating them within their community. Experts agree the current measles vaccine is incapable of eradicating measles. The fully vaccinated are part of the transmission chain. Minor outbreaks such as we are seeing now are well controlled with the detection and isolation, which are public health tools that would have to be used even with 100% vaccine uptake. This is science. You cannot attempt to protect those susceptible to poor infection outcome by ignoring the genetic minority at risk of vaccine injury, like my son. Any law restricting medical freedom must serve a compelling and critical state need and must not value one life above another. I urge you to vote no on this bill, and to everyone in this room, if you know someone who's vaccine injured, please raise your hand.
And Ms. Paiger, thank you for your testimony, and thank you to the three of you for being here today. Appreciate it very much. Senator